I think there are a lot of stories out there of people who are in careers or some sort of more established work now where they started off as volunteers. Here's my few fish and loaves that I can bring. And then suddenly it turns into a passion project and becomes much bigger than they ever thought.
You dream about working really hard and not getting paid for it? Well, you're about to learn how to make that dream a reality today. This episode of After 4. All right, that's extremely tongue-in-cheek. I'm obviously joking. At least I hope it's obvious. But it's not an unusual mindset for today's conversation. We're wrapping up our side quest series with a discussion about volunteering in our free time after graduation. And let's be honest, you're going to be investing so much of your time and energy into a job that pays you. Why would you want to turn around right after work and go keep working for nothing? Well, our guest would suggest that her experiences with volunteering weren't for nothing. They were an opportunity to reconnect with something that she cared deeply about, something that totally transformed her life years before. It was an opportunity to invest in others and to be invested in. Her volunteer hours gave her new perspective and even resulted in pivoting her professional life in a totally unexpected direction. Turns out the compensation she received was something invaluable, a renewed sense of calling. Let's jump in and get introduced to our guest, Amy. She's an InterVarsity alumna and a former elementary school teacher whose life was changed by her volunteering side quest after graduation. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you. Amy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, John. Excited to be here.
Oh, so glad to have you. We've been talking for a while about doing this conversation, and so I'm looking forward to hanging out together for this. Amy, you're joining us. You're actually helping us close off this series that we have been doing for the last few weeks here, our side quests series. We're talking about what is it that we're doing to how is it that we're spending our free time. We're talking about volunteering today as a part of as an option that we would invite alumni to consider as like, hey, what does it look like to incorporate this into your life after graduation? And you have a really unique experience with volunteering, an interesting set of experiences that have come along with that have actually led into some really like important life change for you, which is super cool. And so I'm wondering, Amy, can you just start us off by telling a little bit of that story for us? You know, what has your own experience with volunteering in your free time been like after graduation? And maybe speaking a little bit to, big picture, how it's been a meaningful part of that season of your life too.
My first year out of school, I was an elementary education major and I didn't jump into a job right away that year. So I was subbing in the area and I had quite a bit of capacity in free time. So I was able to just kind of spread, just cast the net wide and see kind of where things led. So I was volunteering in my church with some kids and youth programs. I dabbled a little bit in the music stuff, which is really funny because do not ask me to do that now. But I dabbled a little bit. It's a good time to dabble. I also volunteered at the Humane Society. I adore dogs and I was able to be a dog walker for a season with them. And I just loved that. And then I also helped out at an overnight warming shelter that was opening in town as well for the homeless community. And being in Minnesota in the winter, it was really special to just be available for that. Again, with the flexibility of my stage of life, I was able to do that. So dabble a lot my first year out of college. And then once I started my first year teaching, and my master's degree, my time shrunk tremendously, right? So volunteering is going to ebb and flow a lot depending on the season of life that you're in. Yeah. And so I pared down to just helping out at my church. And then once I finished my master's degree, I started to ask the Lord, okay, what do I do with my time? I have all this time now. That's cool. And what do I do with that? But our staff, who was Lynn Bennett at the time, she started on staff when I was a student here at Winona State. And she had asked me a couple times if I would come back and volunteer while I was in the midst of my master's program and first years of teaching. And I was like, I just can't. And that was wise. That was a good, wise no at that season.
That's good.
But she was lovingly and respectfully persistent. And so when I was asking, when I had all this extra space, it was, I believe, 2021, I started to ask those questions. And some different InterVarsity resources were kind of entering back into my life. And I started to remember how special of a time those years were for me as a student. And when I'd graduated, I was like, I'm done. That was for college. Bye, university. Right. Cool. Which like totally inaccurate perspective. Now that I say that, like
I had the same perspective. I had the same perspective, and here we are.
Yep. Right. Exactly. Alumni department. So, yeah, I mean, I went back to Lynn and I was like, hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you about volunteering. And she was like, that's hilarious, because in this meeting, I was going to ask you again if you would consider volunteering. So awesome. The timing was super sweet. And yeah, so I was volunteering with the chapter, which was, very small at the time. And so it was basically like showing up once a week for Bible study and eating their snacks with them. And I was like, I mean, this is great, like super accessible if you need, right. I was like, I can do this. And just coming back into the InterVarsity jargon, right? Like the way that we approach scripture and the way that we approach the Lord. And I was like, man, I miss this. Like I miss inductive Bible study and OIA and just those familiar things. And I came to faith at my first InterVarsity large group as a freshman in college. So to have that full circle moment of like, man, like this is so special. And that year teaching was actually really, really challenging for me. And so to have, obviously I had my own church community, but to have this kind of support in a weird way too, even as a volunteer, was super sweet and affirming. So, and to walk alongside these college students as they're experiencing their college years. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Like finals are so real in the horizon of student teaching and graduation and all those questions that come up. So I got really invested in these students. And that ended up opening the doors to going on 5-hour staff while I was still teaching, which was funny because I never thought I was going to do that. Fundraising was an absolute no-go for me. And God basically blasts out all those ultimatums that I set before him. And now I am on the verge of going to 35 hours a week with ministry. This is my second school year not teaching and going into ministry. And I am so floored by it. But I love it so much. Like this is not what I expected. But if I hadn't said yes to that volunteering opportunity at that right time, again, like it wouldn't have been appropriate to start sooner. I didn't have the capacity to show up well. Yeah. But when I had said yes at that time, the Lord was opening up doors, and it was very clear within a couple of years that transition needed to be made. And there was also like very real COVID burnout from my teaching career. And
oh my gosh.
That was wild. So, but it was just really sweet of like, Amy, you never thought of yourself in ministry, but you're already dabbling in it. Yeah. I'm going to have you go here now. And I was like, that wasn't the plan, but okay. That's, well, we're going to do it.
And what's interesting to me is that as you're talking about volunteering with InterVarsity, that it seems like that was super meaningful, I'm sure for many reasons, but a couple of them that stood out to me is like, one, it helped you, like you kind of reconnected with your InterVarsity roots in a way that you didn't expect. It helped you, it sort of like brought some of those feelings and experiences back to the surface in a very real way. And that it was also a way in those like 5 hours a week things to like provide some perspective on what you were doing professionally as well. And be like, oh, interesting. Like the Lord's maybe doing something that I didn't expect in this. So there's like a reconnection that happened, and there was like some bigger life perspective that the Lord was providing for you. And I'm bringing this up not as and that only happens if you volunteer with InterVarsity. I mean, like maybe this is one of the benefits of giving your time in a different place, is that it provides some perspective and some opportunities to connect in ways that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are a lot of stories out there of people who are in careers or some sort of more established work now, where they started off as volunteers, just kind of like, I'm just available to help a little bit. Here's my few fish and loaves that I can bring. And then suddenly it turns into a passion project and becomes much bigger than they ever thought. So.
Right. And that could be much bigger than you ever thought in the number of hours that you dedicate to it, or just in the like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect to care about this as much as I did. Like, I thought this would just be sort of a fun alternate thing to do, and I would help other people. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, there's a lot more to this than I was expecting in some really cool, life-giving ways.
Yes, absolutely. And with all this to say, don't be afraid to volunteer if you're like scared of your life taking a significant detour. Also, don't let that stop you. You know, the Lord's gonna do his work. So
yes, we're hearing Amy's story. She's not projecting this onto anybody else. If you're listening, like this is it. It could be something that reroutes you into like, oh man, the Lord's actually directing me into something new. Or it could just be, this is a really nice space for me to just do something different a few times a week or a few times a month. And that is just really good for my soul in being able to step into the thing that I do full time even better. And that, like, both of those things could be realities for our listeners as they're tuning in to this. But either way, there's something strategic and healthy for me and for others when I am giving my time.
Yeah. And I think too, an invitation is, you know, viewing our lives as ministry, not just seeing, like for me, transitioning with ministry being this volunteering thing outside of my public school teaching job, and then shifting into 5-hour staff. And now it's my job. I could easily go into that and be like, well, I checked off my ministry box for my 40 hours a week or whatever, how many hours a week I'm doing it. So now I have this free pass in my other time, or vice versa. If I am working a job that isn't ministry, I think instead of seeing it as these categories, how do we view our lives as ministry? Yeah. And instead of how much of my time do I have to volunteer outside of my paid hours, I think the invitation is how much can I give of my life? Whether it's my work, how can I view my work as ministry, no matter what kind of work it is, because it is a ministry opportunity. Yes. And then how can I view my time, my paid time, or my non-paid time in my community, in my church as a ministry opportunity? How can I view my time at home with my family, my loved ones as a ministry opportunity? Yes. And so just thinking more and more of, okay, my life is ministry to serve the Lord and to make him known with others. How can I do that more in the community and the church around me? Yeah.
Such a great perspective on, yes, not just categorizing or boxing off, okay, I've done my ministry for the week, but instead to say, oh boy, how can I broaden my perspective on what it means for my life to be a work of ministry? So then, Amy, as we're thinking about these spaces, there were some things that sort of happened to you that caused some decision making in this process about where to lean in and where to sort of pull back. But can you speak a little bit more directly to like some of the discernment process that you had as you were figuring out these were the places that really felt like a good fit? And then, if you can speak directly to, and then how did you know that volunteer staff at that time, which now has become full-time staff, but how did you know that volunteer staff that's the one when it was time to lean heavier into that?
Yeah. I think initially you had touched on it earlier too, but I would say what brings you joy and what are things that you just enjoy spending time with or around? Or even conversely, what breaks your heart and what would you like to have an impact on in your community or your church? I even have friends that they've been through their own addiction recovery journey, and they saw a need in the community for a community space for this. And so they started their own ministry and their own, this was volunteering. This wasn't their work. This was their volunteering hours. And they started a ministry in this community space for the addiction recovery community. And they would offer a Bible study during that time and lots of connections. So looking for those opportunities, and if something doesn't exist, could you create something? But another piece with that I shared as part of my story is, what is the reality of your commitment time right now and your capacity? So like I said, when I first started, I was fresh out of college. I didn't have a full-time job. I was subbing tons of open time, super flexible. But then teaching started and my master's degree started, and that time shrunk a lot, right? So just being willing, holding the things loosely, once you find things that you enjoy, dabble a little bit, but what seems like it could be a good fit for long term. And short term things are okay too. I don't want to put that down either. Like your ability to help in whatever capacity in whatever season is fine.
Yeah.
But I'm even thinking of like my friends with young families, like young kids, and they're juggling spouses and homes and pets of their own. Like I don't have those things, right? Like it's just me currently, and my capacity looks different with each season.
Yeah.
So I do have a full-time job now, or a combination. I work another part-time job too. So full-time hours, and there are some other things that I'm volunteering with now too. I have a couple kids programs that I help out with, after school programs. Nice. And my former school that I taught at has a 5K that they run every year. And so I like coordinate all the volunteers for that. But all that to say, you know, like I have capacity again, but it looks different. And I think we just need to be mindful of what is realistic long-term. I think protect your yeses in it by saying no to the things that you need to say no to. So I think it's okay to just cast the net wide in a certain season and dabble a little bit, especially right out of college, like explore a little bit. But find those things that really do bring you joy or you really are passionate about. Make sure it's not draining you, because you do have important other work to be doing too. But something that you are enjoying and is meaningful to you, and that you can genuinely say yes to and show up for after the high wears off. Like it's easy to say yes up front, right? But how do you continue to show up faithfully? Right. I think those are the big things. And you don't have to over spiritualize it, but you can ask the Lord to like just pray about it. And how do I say yes? What do I say yes to? Is there really a wrong answer here? Probably not.
Would you say that those three elements or three or so elements were all sort of coming together for you as you were landing on like, oh, volunteering on campus with my InterVarsity chapter from before? Like, were those things really coming together for you to say like, oh, this is the right yes for me to give?
The thought of going back to this InterVarsity world per se, like it lit up something inside of me. I got super excited about it. The joy of spending time with college students and listening to their stories and eating snacks with them. I was like, this brings me joy. The thought of it's a little bit intimidating. Like I'm not the one to walk into a room of people I don't know, no matter how small it is or big it is. But I was like, I know Lynn, cool. I have a connection to go in there. And then, I think that became such a huge support, like I said, throughout that next year teaching, that like it actually like fed back into me. And I don't think that's something we go into volunteering hoping for, but be open to it being a blessing to you back. And I think that just reaffirmed that this was something that the Lord was really stirring in my heart.
Can you just speak briefly to the power of the difference of like financially supporting the thing versus doing the thing? And that may not always be the case. Like, please people, like, give financially, places do that. Because we can't do all the things, but we might have money to support doing the thing that we can't get to ourselves. But can you just speak to the difference between I financially support this and this is sort of what it does in me versus I go do this thing. I volunteer my time to go do this thing. Can you speak to the difference between those in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, sure. So I had been giving to the chapter before I had started volunteering. And so I do have experience with both those things, right? And the joy of being involved in that capacity in the way that I was able to at that season of my life. And then when I transitioned into volunteering, actually getting to not just hear the stories, but to see the students face to face, to be with them week to week and walk alongside them in their life. So as we're getting to October, hearing the excitement about fall conference coming. And then as November comes, it's like, and midterms, right? Like you start to hear the rhythms of how they're actually experiencing their weekly life. Or I have 3 exams this week and I'm really stressed and this is taking a ton of my time. Or I am a young woman who so badly wants to be married and I haven't met any men that I've wanting to date. And so just the reality of life at that very unique time of life, it's so special and just just to be in the room with the students and do life with them, and also to share perspective from my perspective, where I was several years out of college, but still close enough in age to be able to relate. It's super special. And I think it fuels that a lot, and you get a lot more vision of what is actually happening. So yes, as John said, please continue to give. I also need people,
keep getting.
Right. But like, even with like, so to give a practical example, like I have been giving financially to the chapter, but there's someone who actually needs to be serving the chapter to be doing something with that, right? Like, how do we actually put that gift to action and bless the students and bless the campus? So it is a tremendous opportunity, super sweet for the students to hear another perspective and just be supported by someone who isn't in that same phase with them. Like, you can get a little bit more. There's more than finals, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. But also to be with them in that. So.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting it, that, you know, you are immersed in that space again. You spoke to this a little bit before of like, oh man, I'm remembering now in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise what it was like to be here. And then you can provide some perspective as well. Like, you're drawn in and you can draw them in and say like, oh, how can we learn from each other and encourage one another? And then also, thankfully, there are also people giving to the chapter account, and you can kind of put legs to the work that they are supporting in that way. And I think that that's really, really helpful for us to know that, like, there are uniquely powerful experiences that come from doing the thing, from volunteering that space and that time. And there are uniquely important things that come from financially supporting it as well. That is also part of it. But wow, you've gotten to step in a way that many people don't get the chance to, because of choosing to volunteer in those days. And Amy, I'm wondering, you know, we've talked about some of these experiences. Maybe it's going to feel like I'm asking the same question, but I'm going to ask it anyways from a different perspective. And that is, how has volunteering your time continued to form you? Like, what are the formative ways that it has been developing you as a follower of Jesus, as somebody who cares about his people and his kingdom, who cares about his word? Like, what is that transformation that continues to happen in you because of this volunteer experience? And again, this can be big picture, like volunteering your time does this to you, whether or not you are doing it on campus with InterVarsity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I mentioned before how the invitation is to view your life as ministry, not just your job or just your volunteer hours. So when I was stepping into staff work, like, my volunteer hours were turning into my job. So I was like, what does this mean? And that was something the Lord had showed me during that season of like, continue to view your whole life as ministry. And that's why I sought out other opportunities to continue volunteering in my community. So I think that's a huge way just to continue to see, I don't just go and earn an income and then I come home and take care of my home or myself or whatever. But there are ways to engage with people around me. And then I think too, looking for things in my church, my local church I'm involved in, because whatever church structure you have, or however big or small it is, they need volunteers. I promise you, your church needs volunteers.
Absolutely.
And if the people in that church aren't volunteering, who's going to do that? So it's the people of that church body that are going to help that ministry thrive. But also finding things outside of the church as well in your community. So both and, because if the body of believers is only investing in church or Christian activities, what might that be communicating to the non-Christian areas of your community? So that's why I'm saying, like, those passions and those things that bring you joy or break your heart, that's part of how the Lord has shaped us. And so how can I continue to seek out those ways to love my community well? And that's what helps form us into followers of Jesus more, because we're not just receiving as a body of Christ, but we're looking for ways to look outwardly and be the hands and feet of Jesus then. And we're actually like missionally mindset then, both in the church body to serve and love well there, and also to our local community.
Yes. Also to our local community. That feels like one that we oftentimes lose track of. And sometimes it feels like we're lucky to put in volunteer hours at our church.
Yep.
But to say like, wow, volunteering, in the same way that giving financially is a part of being discipled in the way that I think about my money, my financial resource, that volunteering is also a way that I am being discipled in the way that I look at the resource of my time, the resource of my giftings, and to say like, man, you may give tons of money away and you're like, oh, I want to make sure that other people are supported and that I don't have that I'm not falling in love with money. It's like, great, that's awesome. How are you doing with your time? Because I can hoard my time and say like, this is a resource that I have. Like, I don't want to miss out. And what does it look like to open our hands and say like, oh, this is an opportunity to reinvest the time that God has given me. It's another resource that belongs to Him, that He has entrusted to me. And what does it look like to be a faithful servant with my time and to give that away to people and to do it appropriately? Because that's also part of discernment. What is the time that I have so I can do this in a healthy way, so I can show up well? But that is another resource that is ours to manage that actually belongs to the Lord. and how do I do that? How do I do that well?
Yeah, I completely agree. And full disclosure, I'm not great at time management. Like, it is so hard. And I've had so many of these conversations recently. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's a formation process, right? Like, we're growing in our discipleship with Jesus. So it's an invitation to consider, how can I continue to learn to steward my time better? It's not a all or nothing, hit or miss. You either do it well or you don't. It's an invitation of, how can I consider this in healthy ways? And again, what does the current season look like? And I'm curious too, and I don't know if you want to speak into this, put you on the spot, or you don't have to, but
oh man, all right.
But I'm curious. I've heard of some families too that like view volunteering as like an opportunity for the family to serve too. And so I'm just like, I'm curious how families, especially with young kids, maybe even are trying to figure out, what does this look like in a healthy way? But you don't have to answer that if you don't have something.
But, no, I can.
It's just something I'm curious about.
That's also a reality, especially as your kids grow. And like, it's one thing when you have a small kid that you can hold and like, hey, we're going to go do this thing together, and they don't really fight you because you're holding them. But what you're bringing up does make me think of like, when Caitlin and I transitioned to being a part of this church plant that we've been a part of for the last 6 or 7 years now, the first thing that we did to volunteer was that we were greeters, and our daughter Aurora, who was 1, 2 at the time, she was right there with us. And so it was this moment that we got to very simply hold the doors open together, greet people, and to do it as a family. And it was super fun, because we had never done anything like that before. We'd had our separate sort of volunteer spaces in the church, in our previous church experience. And this was like, hey, here's an opportunity for us to do this all together and to serve as a family, and it's super fun. There are lots of spaces to be able to do that in a church, and I do think it is a blessing to your family, and it's a great example for other people to see like, oh boy, we can do this together. And if you don't have like a spouse and kids, you can also do it with your friends. And be like, hey, let's sign up together, you and me, for the same week every month or a couple times a month of just greeting at the door together. Like, let's do this thing together, or passing out the elements for communion together, or whatever it might be. And like, let's do this together. And so there is definitely a communal opportunity for being able to do that and to share time with other people, which is such a great thought. I'm glad that that's something that you brought to us, Amy, for sure. And I'm wondering, so speaking of things that you're bringing to us, I'm wondering, do you have any final recommendations or words of encouragement? Why can I not think of the word encouragement? Final words of encouragement that you might give to our young alumni as they are thinking about, how should I be spending my time after graduation when I'm not at work?
Yeah. Again, I just want to drill home that concept of like, let it be something that you actually enjoy. No one wants a cranky volunteer to be showing up, right?
No, please.
So find things, right, genuinely things that you enjoy, and don't underestimate the gifts that you do have that you bring, and look for opportunities if they don't exist. So if you are good with like building and maintenance things, like ask your church if there's something that you could help out with. If you're good with tech, see if there's a way that you can help out. If you're good with admin things, see if there's a way you can help out in the office. As a person, like I'm happy to volunteer. I have a hard time receiving volunteers. So people like people asking me, how can I help you? I'm like, I love that question. I love you're asking. I don't know. So if you are looking for ways to get involved, maybe just like be mindful of like, this is how much time I could have to give to this. So you could offer yourself to somebody and say, hey, here are some skills I have. Here's the time I have. Is there a way that I could help out here in this capacity? Yeah. Because I think that would be a super huge blessing. You're already thinking about how could I bring this to this space? And then again, just like let your yes be yes. Be mindful of your capacity in that season. And that might be saying no to some other things, and that's okay too. So that's a lot of final words, but it's a joy. It's a fun experience to kind of experiment with throughout different seasons of your life. So let it ebb and flow. When it's time for something to turn into a no and move on from, that is okay, and you get to move on to the next season of your life too. So just pray that it's a joyful experience.
Alumni, there are so many opportunities and so many different ways to volunteer your time after graduation. And whether that's on campus with InterVarsity like Amy did, or in your church, or in a local community organization, that space is an opportunity to represent Jesus and to carry out his kingdom work. It just is. And it's an opportunity to do it in a way that is totally unique to the way that God has gifted you. So as you think about volunteering, what are your passions? What are your giftings? What are the realities of the time that you have to offer? And what are the opportunities at hand? And how do you sense the Lord leading you into those? Maybe it won't result in a career change. In fact, for the vast majority of you listening, it probably won't. But I promise that it will result in a meaningful opportunity to invest your side questing time in God's kingdom. Alumni, after graduation, it's a common experience to feel like you suddenly have an abundance of time. I promise that one way or another, that time is going to be filled. So as you think about the side quests that are available to you after graduation, how will you choose to fill that free time? However that happens, I hope that this series has helped inspire you to do it with purpose. Amy, thank you so much for joining us this week and for the investment that you've made in your InterVarsity chapter, both as a volunteer and now as a full-time campus staff minister. Alumni, we're taking a 2-week break before our next series, so come back in early September for our next set of conversations around the unwritten rules of adulthood. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it. I will see you in the afterglow. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.